Kaylie Sawyer was born on March 2, 1993, in the small town of Bend, Oregon, USA. This 23-year-old girl was known for her cheerful disposition and positive attitude. Kaylie always greeted each day with a smile, savoring every moment of her existence. She was in a relationship with Cameron Rahim Hoffer, and the young couple shared an apartment near the college in a quiet, peaceful part of town. Kaylie and Cameron seemed like perfectly compatible partners, and the girl's parents wholeheartedly approved of her choice. Initially, Kaylie dreamed of becoming a photographer and even made some progress in this direction, possessing considerable talent. She had grand plans for the future. However, she later took a job as an administrator at a dental clinic. In her new workplace, Kaylie quickly proved herself in the best possible way. She had a knack for finding a connection with every visitor, calming even the most frightened patients who were terrified of the dentist's chair. Observing the work of the doctors, Kaylie gradually came to the conclusion that she herself wanted to become a dentist. The girl felt that she had found her true calling. People trusted her and were not afraid to have their teeth treated under her supervision. On Saturday, July 23, 2016, around 8 p.m., Kaylie and her friend went to a bar in the city center to celebrate a colleague's bachelorette party. The company had a great time, dancing, congratulating the guest of honor, and enjoying alcoholic beverages. Since most of those present were middle-aged employees, the party ended quite early, around 10:30 p.m. The guests began to disperse to their homes, but Kaylie and a few other young girls who wanted to continue the celebration moved to another bar. There they continued to drink, dance, and enjoy the evening. At the establishment, a young man began to show signs of attention to Kaylie, which did not go unnoticed by her boyfriend Cameron's friend. He immediately sent a message to his friend, informing him that Kaylie was flirting with another guy at the bar. This news greatly angered Cameron. Midnight passed, and Kaylie, exhausted and quite tipsy, was already dreaming of being at home in bed. She called Cameron and asked him to pick her up. Despite his resentment and anger, the guy immediately went to get his girlfriend. Kaylie waited for him at the restaurant with a couple of friends. On the way home, an argument broke out between the couple over Kaylie's excessive alcohol consumption and her interaction with another man. When they arrived at the house, an annoyed Cameron immediately got out of the car and headed straight to the apartment. Kaylie, who was angry, did not follow him and remained sitting in the car, trying to calm down and come to her senses. The guy waited for her in the apartment, but she still did not show up. After 10 minutes, Cameron received several strange messages from Kaylie. She apologized for her behavior and said goodbye. Confused and frightened, the guy rushed to the car to find his beloved. The front passenger door of the vehicle was wide open, but there was no one inside. Cameron called Kaylie, and she answered that she had decided to take a walk to cool off and calm down. The girl warned that her phone was about to run out of battery, after which the connection was lost. The guy assumed that his girlfriend might have gone to her friend's place, who lived 6 kilometers from the campus. He got behind the wheel and drove in that direction, carefully examining the roadside in search of Kaylie, but he did not see a trace of the girl anywhere. That night, he never managed to find her. Kaylie's phone no longer answered, and her friend insisted that she had not seen her. Cameron thought that the girl might have gone somewhere with other friends and would return in the morning on her own when she sobered up. He returned to the apartment and went to bed. However, the next morning, Kaylie still did not show up, and her phone continued to forward calls to voicemail. Cameron felt that something was wrong. Such behavior was not at all like his girlfriend's habits. He contacted Kaylie's family, asking if they knew where she might be. The parents replied that their daughter had not called them, but they also suggested that she might have stayed overnight with friends and would return soon. Cameron began calling all of Kaylie's friends and colleagues, but none of them had any information about the girl's whereabouts. Seriously worried, he turned to the police and reported his girlfriend's disappearance. The police officer who arrived at Cameron's place carefully listened to his story but suggested that the girl would probably return home on her own soon. In his opinion, at the age of 23, it was quite possible to disappear for a while without warning. That's why law enforcement officers were in no hurry to start a search. The next day, Kaylie still did not show up at home and did not come to work. She had always been a very responsible employee and never missed a workday. It became obvious that something bad had happened to the girl. Then the police finally got down to a serious search. The story told by Cameron looked strange and suspicious. He was jealous of Kaylie with another man, left her alone in the car, then went to look for her, and the girl's phone allegedly suddenly ran out of battery. All this made the guy the main suspect, as he was the last one to see the missing person, and his story raised many questions. Cameron was invited for questioning. During the conversation with the investigators, he repeated his entire story. The guy actively cooperated with law enforcement, allowing them to search the apartment and car without any objection, and also took part in the search for his girlfriend in every possible way. In addition, Cameron successfully passed a lie detector test, so in the end, all suspicions were removed from him. A young police officer named Edwin Lara visited the police station and shared a shocking story. The woman said that her husband, Edwin Lara, who worked as a security guard at the college, had been behaving extremely unusually since Sunday. He returned home late after his night shift and was in a confused state. Something was clearly weighing on Edwin's mind and would not leave him alone. Eventually, the man confessed to his wife that on the night of Sunday, July 24th, while driving a company car, he accidentally hit a young girl who was walking along the edge of the road. According to Edwin, the girl was tipsy and literally fell under the wheels of his car. He did not have time to react and brake in time. Edwin also told Isabel that he had hidden the girl's body, and her belongings were in the shed near their house. Upon receiving this information, a group of police officers immediately went to the Lara couple's home, but Edwin was no longer there. The man had already managed to leave. Law enforcement officers conducted a thorough search of the house and came across many interesting finds. Among them were a woman's purse with various small items and cosmetics, shoes, a strand of blonde hair, and a large blood-stained stone, which made the greatest impression on the cops. The things were also covered in blood. Later, an examination showed that the hair and belongings belonged to the missing Kaylie. All these details did not fit at all with the version of an accidental hit-and-run voiced by Edwin. It seemed that the man had used the stone to inflict bodily injuries on the girl. And most likely, he had killed the poor thing with this very weapon, but the victim's body was nowhere to be found. The police meticulously examined every corner of the house and the surrounding area but found nothing else of substance. Apparently, Edwin's disappearance was not a mere coincidence. The man seemed to have taken the body away in his car. After that, a search was announced for Edwin Lara and his vehicle. It later turned out that Isabel did not immediately inform law enforcement about her husband's confession, as she feared for her own safety and therefore initially pretended to be on his side. Edwin drove off in an unknown direction, and Isabel waited for some time before going to the police. Thus, the criminal had enough time to flee as far away from the city as possible, which significantly complicated his search. When asked by the police where her husband might have gone, Isabel replied that Edwin's parents lived in Los Angeles and suggested that he had probably gone there to lay low and hide. So, a group of law enforcement officers immediately headed to Los Angeles, located in the neighboring state of California. On the way, they came across Edwin's abandoned car. Inside the vehicle, they found many mysterious notes with some numbers and apologies for certain strange actions. The police carefully studied these papers but could not find any useful information in them. An inspection of the vehicle also did not reveal any traces of an accident. However, the discovery of the car only confirmed the assumption that Edwin was heading to Los Angeles to his parents. It was not possible to track the suspect's mobile phone. Meanwhile, Edwin did not stop his horrific crimes. While fleeing from justice, he kidnapped a 19-year-old girl named Andrea Mace. The criminal noticed how she, having finished her work shift at the store, got into her car and reached for her phone. While the girl, oblivious to the world around her, was browsing something on her smartphone, Edwin imperceptibly approached the car, opened the front passenger door, and slipped inside. He was wearing a bulletproof vest and holding a gun in his hands. Edwin, threatening the frightened Andrea with a weapon, ordered her to drive him to California. Trembling with fear, the girl obeyed the criminal's demand. During the trip, Edwin told the captive about what he had done to Kaylie. He even showed Andrea a photograph of his previous victim, which he saw in the news reporting on his wanted status. The kidnapper shared with the girl that his own car had broken down when he tried to escape from the city, and he had to look for the next victim who could take him to Los Angeles. Edwin even let slip that he had considered kidnapping a pregnant woman and planned to do something terrible to her. However, he did not come across any pregnant women. Instead, he saw Andrea alone and decided that she was perfect for the role of his hostage. It was terribly creepy and disgusting for the girl to hear this, but she tried to pull herself together and not give in to panic in order to survive. When a few hours had passed, Edwin concluded that Andrea was driving too fast, which could attract unwanted attention from the police. He ordered her to stop and move to the passenger seat, while he settled behind the wheel, having previously handcuffed the girl to the car. Andrea realized that her only chance for salvation was to gain the trust of the kidnapper. She told him that she understood his actions, but her car was leaking oil, which was true. They would not be able to reach Los Angeles in such a vehicle. Andrea cherished the hope that Edwin would transfer to another car and let her go free. But this plan failed. During the journey, the travelers stopped at a gas station to refuel the air conditioner. Edwin strictly ordered Andrea to remain silent and not engage in conversations with anyone, threatening that otherwise, he would kill not only her but also everyone she tried to talk to. The frightened girl obeyed the kidnapper and did not attempt to approach anyone, although she hoped that someone would notice her pleading looks and guess that she needed help. However, no one paid any attention to this couple. When evening came, Edwin and his hostage stopped for the night at a roadside motel. The girl quickly realized that the kidnapper intended to rape her. Then Andrea remembered a clever rescue plan and secretly turned on the alarm on her phone. As soon as Edwin began his dirty advances on the captive in the room, her mobile suddenly rang. The frightened Edwin, who suffered from paranoia, immediately suspected that it was a conditional signal from the police and that he was being watched. However, Andrea quickly calmed the kidnapper down by lying that it was just a reminder to take her medication. When Edwin asked what she was sick with, the girl replied that she had a sexually transmitted disease. Upon hearing this, the instantly lost any desire to bother Andrea. The man handcuffed the captive to the bed and settled on the opposite edge. Edwin could not fall asleep in any way. Panic seized him. He imagined that the police would burst in at any moment. Andrea lay quietly, hoping that the kidnapper had finally fallen into a deep sleep and that she would be able to free herself somehow and escape. However, Edwin suddenly jumped out of bed and began to call someone using a disposable mobile phone. He spoke in Spanish, so the girl did not understand anything at all. After finishing the call, the kidnapper announced to Andrea that they needed to leave urgently, and they found themselves on the road again. During the trip, the oil in the car began to boil, which made Edwin terribly angry. He told the hostage that they needed to look for other transport. At that moment, Andrea's last hopes for liberation vanished like smoke. She sincerely believed that Edwin would leave her with the broken-down car and go on himself, but he clearly had other plans. Soon the travelers saw a motel on the side of the road, next to which several cars were parked, and they turned into it. The door of one of the rooms was wide open. An elderly man was just leaving the room, loading things into the trunk of his own car. Edwin instantly assessed the situation and realized that this was exactly what he needed. Grabbing Andrea, he approached the man and, threatening him with a gun, demanded to give him the keys to the car. However, the elderly gentleman did not lose his head and began to loudly call for help. Then Edwin shot him, after which, firmly holding his hostage, he ran with all his might towards the nearest gas station, hoping to hide before the police arrived. Fortunately, the wounded man survived. At the gas station, luck smiled upon the fugitives. There was a car whose doors turned out to be unlocked. Edwin and Andrea immediately jumped into the car and sped away. In the back seat of the passenger compartment, they saw 3 frightened children. A 17-year-old boy who had recently received his driver's license was behind the wheel. The criminal, holding the teenager at gunpoint, ordered him to leave the gas station immediately. As it turned out, this family was traveling from Canada to the USA by car. The parents had just gone to the store at the gas station when their car with the children was stolen right before their eyes. The shocked couple immediately called the police. As soon as the car was on the highway, Edwin demanded that the children throw their phones out the window to avoid possible tracking. He intimidated them by saying that he was a dangerous criminal and could take their lives at any moment. The boys and girls, including the young driver, were trembling with fear. However, the teenager managed to find arguments that convinced the kidnapper to let the children go. He noted that the presence of the little ones would only interfere with Edwin's plans and make the fugitives easy prey for the police. After some hesitation, the man agreed. He dropped the boys and girls off on the side of the road, after which he drove on with Andrea. Edwin was in a state of extreme tension and despair. He was panicking. As it later turned out, one of the children had managed to secretly keep her phone and immediately called her parents, informing them of her whereabouts. The police, together with the anxious couple, quickly found the children and took them to a safe place. The kids were incredibly frightened by what had happened. They told law enforcement officers about a dangerous criminal who had kidnapped them along with a girl. The children did not realize that the girl was also a hostage and a victim of the kidnapper. The young witnesses added that the man had confessed to committing murders. The police, having received a description of the vehicle, immediately rushed in pursuit, having no idea who they were dealing with. Edwin quickly realized his mistake. Kidnapping a car with children could cost him his freedom. He understood that the police were chasing him, so he decided to record a video message while driving to California. In the video, the man apologized for his crimes. Then he forced Andrea to publish this video on her Facebook page with the telling title, "Killer on the Loose." Meanwhile, Edwin's mental state was rapidly deteriorating, and paranoid ideas were increasingly taking over his mind. He assured Andrea that he heard the hum of police helicopters approaching, although the girl did not notice anything of the kind. She only prayed silently for salvation. Edwin increased the speed of the car until a police car with flashing lights appeared behind them. The fugitives sped past the patrol car, which immediately turned around and rushed in pursuit. After some time, Edwin was finally caught up with and arrested. Andrea, finally finding herself at liberty, could hardly believe that this nightmare was over. However, her trials were far from over. The girl was also arrested and taken to the police station along with the criminal. At first, law enforcement officers assumed that she was an accomplice of the kidnapper. Andrea had to undergo a humiliating search and lengthy, exhausting interrogations. The girl, who had endured so much suffering and abuse at the hands of Edwin, had to prove her complete innocence. She convinced the police that she had been kidnapped and forcibly held by the criminal and that she had not intended to go anywhere with him voluntarily. Only after 18 hours was Andrea released. Police officers from the city of Bend, who were looking for Edwin in connection with Kaylie's disappearance, learned about his arrest. Soon they arrived at the police station in California, where the detainee was being interrogated. At first, Edwin tried to convince the investigators that he had accidentally hit Kaylie with his car. According to him, the girl was still alive after the hit, so he finished her off with several blows of a stone to the head so that the victim would not scream. However, an examination of the criminal's car did not reveal any traces of an accident, which was reported to Edwin. Then he abruptly changed his testimony and stated that he had deliberately run over Kaylie, mistaking her for a prostitute. But this version also looked extremely doubtful, because there were usually no girls of easy virtue in that area. On the other hand, it was common to meet tipsy students returning from parties there. It was such young people that the campus police usually gave a ride home. Eventually, Edwin came up with another story, which, by all appearances, was as close to the truth as possible. On the night when Kaylie disappeared, he was patrolling the area around the college in an official vehicle. Suddenly, he noticed a pretty girl who could barely stand on her feet. She was very drunk. Edwin stopped the car and offered to give her a ride. Kaylie agreed, as she saw that the man in front of her was a security guard, and therefore felt safe. The girl had no idea what horror awaited her in that car. Instead of taking the student home, Edwin strangled her, and then brutally killed her by hitting her on the head with a rock numerous times. Later, he admitted that he had long dreamed of committing murders and drew inspiration from the stories of famous serial killers. Seeing the lonely and defenseless Kaylie on the road that night, Edwin instantly identified her as the perfect first victim. He planned to kill again. For a long time, the criminal refused to show where he had hidden the girl's body, but later he did point out the location on the map. The police found Kaylie's mutilated remains on the side of the road. The examination established that the cause of death was a severe craniocerebral injury inflicted by several blows with a blunt object. Edwin was charged with a whole range of crimes: the premeditated murder of Kaylie, attempted murder of the elderly man, Kaylie, kidnapping of Andrea, and car theft. The suspect was transferred to his native state of Oregon, where he faced the death penalty. During the trial, Edwin claimed that he had repeatedly asked to be allowed to contact his lawyer but was refused. The police, however, insisted that they had offered the suspect the opportunity to use the services of a defense attorney, to which he replied, "The lawyer is already here." Edwin hinted that he would act as his own lawyer, but later abandoned these intentions. As a result of these misunderstandings, the criminal's confession to Kaylie's murder, obtained during the interrogation, was rejected and not taken into account during the consideration of the case. Thus, the burden of proving Edwin's guilt fell entirely on the shoulders of the prosecution. However, the prosecutors had at their disposal many other compelling pieces of evidence. First of all, these were the material evidence found in the suspect's shed, his DNA found on Kaylie's body, the testimony of his wife, as well as the testimony of Andrea, to whom the criminal had told all the gruesome details of the student's murder. The prosecutors demanded life imprisonment for Edwin Lara without the right to early release. Eventually, the defendant made a deal with the investigation and pleaded guilty to most of the charges: premeditated murder, attempted murder, and kidnapping. At the same time, he refused to admit the fact of Kaylie's. In exchange for a partial admission of guilt, Edwin was guaranteed life imprisonment without the death penalty. The jury found him guilty, and the court passed a sentence: 2 life terms behind bars without the right to parole. Meanwhile, the relatives of the deceased Kaylie filed a civil lawsuit against the college where Edwin Lara worked as a security guard. They accused the educational institution of criminal negligence. The administration of the institution had hired Edwin without inquiring about his mental state and without conducting appropriate tests. In addition, the college provided its employee with access to weapons, handcuffs, and a bulletproof vest, which were later used to commit a series of serious crimes. The legal dispute was settled out of court. The parties signed a settlement agreement, according to which the college paid the family of the deceased girl $2 million in compensation. This horrible incident forced the educational institution to significantly revise its personnel policy and strengthen security measures. All security service employees underwent a thorough background check, including tests for professional suitability and psychological stability. The college significantly improved its security system to protect students and staff from a repeat of such a tragedy. I look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. Until next time, friends.